History has a pattern. Empires rise, dominate, and collapse always in the same sequence. 3 times in 500 years, superpowers believed they were untouchable. All fell. Spain, Britain, the Soviet Union. Each followed the same deadly blueprint of decline. And now, in 2025, the United States is walking that same path, almost like history repeating itself. But first, let's focus on the first empire that perished, Spain. The wealthiest and most powerful nation of the 1500s, Spain controlled half of the world's gold and silver. Its armies dominated Europe. Its currency was accepted everywhere. The Spanish galleons brought treasure from the Americas, and merchants across the globe coveted their silver. King Philip II ruled from 1556 to 1598, spending freely to maintain the empire that stretched across 4 continents: Europe, the Americas, the Mediterranean, the Philippines. Spain fought everywhere, draining resources faster than revenue could replenish. Stage 1 of imperial collapse: military overextension. Even with half the nation's income going to armies, it was never enough. Wars raged against the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, against France and Italy, against Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, conflicts with England's navy, battles in the Americas. Every corner of the empire demanded soldiers, ships, and money. The cost of defending empire became unbearable, yet the ambition to rule everywhere never slowed. Stage 2. Currency to pay for endless wars. The crown mixed copper into silver coins. The face value stayed the same, but real value plummeted. Inflation surged. Merchants no longer trusted the currency. Spain's wealth in silver was hollow, a paper empire masking economic fragility beneath the surface. Stage 3. Debt spiral. Spain borrowed constantly from Italian bankers, German lenders, anyone who would lend. Bankruptcy struck 4 times in 40 years: 1557, 1560, 1575, and 1596. Each time reforms were promised. But borrowing continued, spending continued. The debt spiral fed itself, with no end in sight. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. With gold flowing from the Americas, Spain stopped producing its own goods. Agriculture stagnated. Shipbuilding declined. Manufacturing slowed. Why work when imported goods could be bought with silver? The nobility considered labor beneath them. Innovation died. The empire depended entirely on the wealth flowing in, not on creating wealth itself. Silver and gold poured in, only to flow back out to buy French wine, Italian silk, Dutch tools, and luxuries. By 1600, Spain produced almost nothing. Its economy relied on imports. Its mines were being exhausted. When production fell and the silver mines began to deplete, the foundation of the empire collapsed. Stage 5. Social decay. With the economy failing, crime rose, poverty spread, and the streets of Madrid were filled with beggars. The best minds left. Intellectuals, artisans, merchants all fled to countries where opportunities still existed. Spain was left with bureaucrats, soldiers, and priests. Consumption replaced production. By 1640, Portugal broke away. By 1650, the Netherlands, Spain's richest territory, gained independence. By 1700, the Spanish Empire existed only in name. Large on maps, but economically lifeless. From global superpower to regional power, Spain never recovered. Its decline became a cautionary tale for all who came after. The lesson is clear. Wealth alone cannot sustain an empire. Military might alone cannot protect it. Production, innovation, and a skilled, motivated population are the true engines of power. Spain had the gold, the soldiers, the prestige, but without production and sustainable governance, collapse was inevitable. This is the blueprint: military overreach, currency debasement, debt, economic stagnation, social decay. 5 stages of collapse repeated in history. Spain was the first example. Britain and the Soviet Union would follow centuries later, echoing the same mistakes. And the story does not end there. Spain's collapse shaped Europe, created power vacuums, and offered lessons ignored by later empires. History teaches that the seeds of decline are often sown during the empire's greatest triumphs. Spain's glory concealed its fragility. Its riches masked its vulnerabilities. Its pride blinded it to reality. The empire thought it was invincible. It believed its gold made it untouchable. But power is fragile when built on debt, corruption, and dependence on imports. The Spanish story is a warning. The pattern of decline does not wait for permission. Spain's fall was not sudden. It took decades, but the collapse was inevitable once the stages aligned. Military overextension drained the treasury. Currency debasement eroded trust. Debt spiraled out of control. Domestic production died. Social order deteriorated. By 1700, Spain had become irrelevant on the world stage. Today, Spain is a pleasant, cultured country, but no longer a superpower. Its empire, its wealth, its dominance all history. A reminder that power without production is temporary. And as we look at the modern world, the same stages are visible again. Superpowers rise and fall. The pattern repeats. The question is not if, but when. Spain's story is the first chapter in a history of collapse, a blueprint for what happens when power is mismanaged. Let's turn our focus from Spain to the next great empire, one that once ruled a quarter of the planet and whose influence touched every continent. Britain, the empire where the sun never set, controlled vast territories, millions of subjects, and commanded global trade through its navy and commerce. By 1900, London was the financial capital of the world, and the pound sterling was the backbone of global markets. Stage 1. Military overextension. Britain maintained garrisons in India, Africa, the Middle East, the Pacific, and the Caribbean, spreading its resources across 6 continents simultaneously. World War I erupted, and Britain chose to fight alongside its allies, committing enormous sums and manpower to maintain global dominance. The cost was staggering. Britain borrowed billions from the United States, converting itself from the world's creditor to a debtor nation almost overnight. Stage 2. Currency debasement. War drained gold reserves, and in 1925 Britain returned to the gold standard at a pre-war rate, overvaluing the pound. Exports became expensive, domestic manufacturing slowed, unemployment rose, and economic growth stalled, sowing seeds of long-term decline. Stage 3. Debt spiral. The empire's borrowing continued through World War II, further enlarging the debt and weakening Britain's financial foundation. By 1945, Britain owed more than its entire GDP to allies and creditors, unable to sustain military power or economic growth simultaneously. Stage 4. Loss of empire. India, the crown jewel, gained independence in 1947, and over the next decades, Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia followed. Britain's empire existed mostly in memory by the 1970s, its territories independent, leaving London a city of financial prestige but limited real power. Stage 5. Currency collapse. The pound fell dramatically from $403 in 1942, barely $30 by 1980, losing status as a global reserve currency. The empire's military and political pretenses persisted, but the economic foundation had eroded beyond repair. Britain became a regional power, not a global superpower. And yet, Britain's decline provides lessons for every nation that believes dominance is permanent, showing how wealth and influence can vanish within a generation. Just as Spain fell when gold couldn't sustain production and innovation, Britain fell when military and financial commitments outpaced resources and productivity. The same stages repeat across history: overextension, debasement, debt, loss of productive capacity, and collapse. Every empire believes it is different, immune to the lessons of the past, until the pattern proves otherwise. Britain's fall was slower than Spain's, but the result was identical: diminished influence, weakened economy, and permanent decline on the world stage. By examining the British case, we can see the early warning signs for today's superpowers, signs that are easy to overlook but impossible to ignore. Stage 1 through 5 played out in London, Manchester, and Bombay, each city a node in an empire straining under its own weight. Factories, docks, and trade routes that once fueled global dominance now faced declining productivity and competition from emergent powers like Germany and the United States. Technology, once a British advantage, became a tool for competitors who learned, improved, and eventually surpassed the empire. The sun set on British manufacturing first, then its colonies, then its global currency influence, all in a sequence the pattern had predicted centuries earlier. Britain's experience is a cautionary tale, showing that even wealth, naval power, and centuries of dominance cannot prevent decline if the underlying economic structure erodes. It's a lesson in human behavior as much as economics. Complacency, overconfidence, and short-term thinking amplify structural weaknesses, and it prepares us for the next chapter. A nation whose collapse unfolded almost overnight, the Soviet Union, showing how quickly the final stages can arrive. From the slow burn of Britain, we turn to the rapid implosion of the USSR, a superpower undone in less than 3 years. The Soviet Union's rise after World War II seemed unstoppable. With nuclear weapons, satellites, and a sphere of influence across Eastern Europe. Stage 1. Military overextension. The USSR spent up to 20% of GDP on the military, far beyond sustainable levels, matching America's reach around the globe. Every Allied regime required support: Cuba, North Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Angola, Ethiopia, a global network draining resources at every turn. Stage 2. Economic stagnation. Central planning destroyed incentives, innovation stalled, factories produced low-quality goods, and agriculture failed despite abundant natural resources. By the 1980s, the USSR imported grain from the West, a nation with some of the richest farmland on Earth unable to feed itself. Stage 3. Currency collapse. The ruble was worthless internationally, forcing the government to trade gold and oil for essentials, revealing a system built on paper promises. Stage 4. Loss of empire. Eastern Europe slipped away rapidly. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and East Germany broke free in just a year. Stage 5. Complete collapse. December 26, 1991. The Soviet Union ceased to exist. 900 days from the Berlin Wall to total dissolution. No invasion, no military defeat, only the unrelenting consequences of economic overreach, mismanaged currency, and political rigidity. And with the Soviet Union, we see the speed at which stage 6 and 7 can arrive when productive capacity is gone. The pattern is consistent: overextension, currency issues, debt, loss of productive capacity, and social decay leading inevitably to collapse. The Soviet Union emerged from World War II as a global superpower, with nuclear weapons, vast military reach, and satellites orbiting the globe. For decades it matched America militarily and ideologically, spreading influence across Eastern Europe and beyond. While citizens believed in a bright communist future, but beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Central planning suppressed innovation, factories produced outdated goods, and farms struggled to feed the population. The first stage of collapse mirrored previous empires: military overextension. The USSR spent 15 to 20% of GDP on defense, triple that of the United States. It propped up allies worldwide: Cuba, North Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Angola, trying to counter American influence, stretching resources thinner each year. Despite global presence, domestic infrastructure and consumer production began to falter. Cities and towns faced shortages, and technology lagged decades behind the West. Stage 2, economic stagnation, took hold. Oil revenues sustained the economy temporarily, but the underlying inefficiencies could not be masked indefinitely. Factories produced low-quality goods. Agriculture failed to meet domestic needs. Citizens increasingly relied on imports while trust in the ruble dwindled. Stage 3, currency collapse, followed. The ruble lacked real international value, and even locals preferred dollars when possible. The government scrambled to maintain stability. Oil prices dropped in the 1980s, draining foreign reserves and exposing the fragility of the Soviet financial system. Panic began quietly spreading. Stage 4, loss of empire, accelerated as Eastern European satellites broke away. The Berlin Wall fell in 1989, signaling the rapid unraveling of Soviet control. Countries like Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia reclaimed sovereignty. The USSR's strategic depth vanished almost overnight, leaving it vulnerable and financially exhausted. By 1991, Stage 5 complete collapse arrived. The Soviet Union ceased to exist on December 26, just 900 days after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Nuclear weapons remained, but the government could not pay its workers or maintain infrastructure. The ruble became worthless almost instantly. The Soviet collapse was sudden, brutal, and total, echoing the same stages Spain and Britain had endured centuries earlier. It demonstrated that overextension, economic mismanagement, and currency failure could bring even the most militarized superpower to its knees. And now, in 2025, the United States is navigating a strikingly similar path, with 5 of the 7 critical stages already in motion. Military commitments span over 150 countries, a $850 billion budget struggles to sustain aging equipment, and recruitment is declining despite global threats. Stage 2, currency debasement, mirrors history. The dollar is fiat, the money supply has grown exponentially, and purchasing power has eroded steadily since 1971. Stage 3, debt spiral, looms as national debt reaches $36 trillion, with interest payments nearing $1 trillion annually, surpassing defense spending. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity, has gutted manufacturing. Dependence on foreign supply chains for medicine, electronics, and steel is now absolute. Stage 5, social decay, is evident in rising crime, drug overdoses, declining fertility, and fractured political institutions unable to address systemic issues effectively. Early signs of Stage 6 reserve currency erosion are visible. Nations like China and Russia are diversifying, trading in yuan and rubles, and reducing dollar reliance. Stage 7, final collapse, is the looming possibility. The pattern of historical superpower decline suggests that it could be sudden, dramatic, and irreversible. History does not bend for exceptionalism. Spain, Britain, and the USSR all thought they were unique, yet each fell by the same mathematical sequence. The United States may still find a path to recovery, but the warning is clear. Ignoring these stages risks repeating history on a global scale. The lessons are written not in textbooks, but in the ruins of empires that believed they were permanent, confident, and untouchable. With a pattern clear, our gaze turns to the United States, a nation unknowingly following the same path that doomed mighty empires before it. Across the globe, America maintains over 750 military bases in 80 countries, deploying troops in 150 nations, with commitments it cannot possibly sustain. From NATO in Europe to defending Japan and South Korea, from countering China in the Pacific to endless conflicts in the Middle East, the budget strains under the weight of ambition. Equipment ages faster than it can be replaced. Recruitment lags. Every aircraft carrier, every overseas installation, every extended deployment adds another layer of invisible debt just as it did for Spain, Britain, and the US. History whispers, overextension is the first crack in imperial armor, and the first empire to ignore it paid the ultimate price. Currency debasement follows silently, almost invisibly. In 1971, Nixon closed the gold window, severing the dollar's link to reality itself. The paper we trust became purely symbolic. Since 2000, the money supply has quadrupled, and more than $6 trillion printed since 2020 has quietly eroded the purchasing power of every American. Inflation creeps into grocery aisles, housing, and retirement accounts, a slow poison masked by glossy headlines and optimistic projections. Then comes the debt spiral, a stage so familiar to historians it reads like a warning etched in stone. National debt now towers at $36 trillion, with interest payments approaching $1 trillion annually, already surpassing the entire defense budget. Year after year, deficits grow, borrowing feeds on itself, a cycle identical to the collapse of Spain, where borrowed silver financed endless wars, and the British Empire, drowning in the cost of maintaining global dominance. Loss of productive capacity gnaws at the heart of America. The nation designs, finances, and consumes but produces far less than it needs. Imports exceed exports by $800 billion annually. Critical supply chains, medicine, electronics, steel, military components are vulnerable to foreign control. Spain, centuries ago, relied on New World silver while neglecting domestic industry. America now mirrors that dependency. Wealth without productive power is fragile wealth. Social decay seeps into every corner. Trust in institutions collapses, crime surges, drug overdoses claim over 100,000 lives each year, and political dysfunction paralyzes governance at every level. Fertility rates drop, young talent departs or disengages. Innovation slows. America's societal glue, the invisible force holding the empire together, is fraying thread by thread. Meanwhile, the dollar's reign faces subtle yet undeniable challenges. BRICS nations craft alternatives. Central banks hoard gold. China and Russia increasingly trade in yuan and rubles. Even Saudi oil transactions bypass the dollar. The cracks in financial dominance, subtle but persistent, echo the slow erosion of Spanish and British currency empires before them. And then looms collapse, the final, terrifying stage. History shows that once an empire reaches this point, decline accelerates, often suddenly, ruthlessly, irreversibly. Spain, Britain, and the USSR all fell swiftly after reaching the endgame, leaving shockwaves felt across continents. The US is not immune. Overextension, debt, currency debasement, social decay, and waning influence form a sequence no empire has escaped. Yet, awareness offers a glimmer of hope. Reform finances, rebuild productive capacity, reduce overextension, restore societal cohesion. Even as technology, innovation, and global influence suggest strength, fragilities remain hidden beneath the illusion of invincibility. Denial and delay amplify decline. Spain, Britain, and the USSR all discovered the same truth too late. The United States now stands at a critical juncture deep into Stage 5. Stages 6 and 7 may approach faster than expected, carrying consequences that could reshape the global order. The pattern is set, but deliberate action could still alter the trajectory. 3 empires fell before, each confident, each believing they were different. Now, the world watches as the same sequence unfolds in America. History is not destiny, but it is a teacher. And for those willing to listen, the lessons are written in every empire that has risen and fallen. The question remains, will America heed the warnings, or follow the fate of those who came before?